I would propose to start the official part
Yeah.
of the
Yes.
meeting. And I would propose Anton to you to
Yes.
introduce participants and the agenda of the meeting.
Yes. Thank you, Denise. Dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Anton Perlin. I'm Senior Project Manager of the Global Business Network of Schneider Group. I'm glad to welcome you at the webinar Russia-Europe 2020, Current Investment Projects and New Business Opportunities, which is hosted by Schneider Group and the Association of Industrial Parks of Russia. The webinar is dedicated to investment opportunities in Russia, and we want to force a discussion between you, European investors, and Russian regions who are also participating today. We have had more than 150 participants actually, and right now we have around 77 participants from several European countries and industries, from Germany, Italy, Austria, Switzerland, Sweden, Norway, as well from the United States, South Africa, India, Japan, Australia. In particular, we welcome BMW, Bosch, Willow, who is our current client, French company Suez, Italian company Matic Nemo, Unicredit, Commerzbank, Mizuho Bank from Japan, and many other amazing companies. Today, we also would like to welcome representatives of government organizations, if they have joined right now, and business associations from Europe. I'm sure that we will have a productive Q&A session at the end. Please send us your questions in the chat during the presentations. And now I give the floor for introduction to Denis Zhuravsky, the Executive Director of the Association of Industrial Parks.
Thank you, Anton. So we also invited our members to this conference, and I suppose that there are approximately 30 or 40 participants who are members of the Association of Industrial Parks. They are heads of regional development corporation, investment agencies from Russian regions, and general managers of industrial parks and special economical zones of Russian Federation. So as you might know, we unite most industrial parks within the association, and such people who are interested in relations with international companies are participating now in this seminar. Also, we have on board service companies such like consultancy, industrial design and industrial construction companies, and they also are participating now. So I thanks to Schneider Group for the initiatives of this seminar. We really value the opportunity to talk to your clients in Europe, and this is a good sign for us that so many participants from different countries from Europe are participating. And the purpose of presentations, which we are going to have, is to share the expert opinion on current situation in Russia, particularly business environment, localization opportunities, and investment opportunities in Russian Federation. So again, we have some presentations which already included in the agenda, and afterwards we will have half an hour, maybe 1 hour. We are not limited on time to have a discussion, and all participants will have an opportunity to raise some topics, to comment, to ask speakers, etc. So again, thanks to all of us for your time, and let's start the agenda. The first presentation is Schneider Group. There are 3 speakers, 3 experts. Please start your presentation.
Yes, thank you, Denise. I will right now upload my presentation. Just a moment. Okay, can everybody see the presentation?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. So the topic of our presentation is current macroeconomic environment and why should European companies actually invest in Russia. We would like to start with some basic facts about Russia and the opportunities in Russia. This first part will be covered by myself. The second part will be about support measures for investors and the current legislative environment will be covered by Dr. Thomas Mundry, our partner for tax and legal and localization. The third part is about motivation for localization. How was it before the crisis? How is it after the crisis for you to come to Russia? This part will be covered by Mr. Dirk Frike, our director for localization projects, who is now located in Leipzig in Germany. So what is the connection between the Russian Federation and European Union? What are the opportunities which we have? We have in Europe a lot of modern concepts like Industry 4.0. We have modern technologies. We have many big and strong enterprises, but as well many small and medium enterprises who are hidden champions. And all these technologies and products can be transferred to the Russian Federation and localized in the Russian Federation. Vice versa, in Russia, you can find a lot of high qualified IT people, a lot of IT expertise, many natural resources, in big volumes, and you can localize your production and thus re-export your production to another countries, to the Eurasian Economic Union, to the European Union back. What are the basic facts in Russia? The population is quite high, around 145 millions. The GDP per capita is around $11,000, which is still lower than in Europe. The total gross domestic product is around 1,658 trillions. We have massively improved in the doing business ranking and shifted to place 28 in 2019. The industry and the economics is centered around big metropolitan areas, which you see on the right side in the table. The procurement is driven by income inequality. There are large purchasing power differences between the regions. And we have one of the most modern tax systems in the world, which was developed by the current Premier Minister Mikhail Mishustin. We have as well one of the cheapest mobile internet in the world. Let's compare Russia and Europe against each other. The area of Russia is 4 times bigger than that of Europe, but the population in Russia is almost 4 times smaller than that of Europe. And by nature, European companies invest a lot in the Russian Federation. If we take Germany, Netherlands, France, Italy, and United Kingdom and Austria, 6 countries, these countries have invested in Russia almost 20 billions in 2017. There was a slight decrease from 18 billions to 13 billions in 2018, but nevertheless, the total European investments of all European countries amounted to 40 billions in 2018, sorry. And the Russian investments in Europe, from Russia to Europe, amounted to around 4 billions in 2018. We have many German companies, more than 4,500 German companies still operating in Russia, more than 600 French companies, around 500 Italian companies, British companies, and around 500 Austrian companies. So many companies operating from your countries in Russia and still investing in our country. Let us take a brief look at the trade structure with Russia. We all know that Russia is still exporting a lot of natural resources like oil, gas, petroleum products to the European Union, and from the European Union, from your countries, we still get many high value added products, many machinery, many technologies. And you can see in the table above that the trade volume between Germany and Russia, for example, was in total around 60 billions in 2018. And the Netherlands was also very strong. Italy comes on the 3rd place and France on the 4th place with imports of 9.5 billions to Russia. What is the outlook after the crisis? We anticipate that the GDP of Russia will decline in the base case scenario by around 4%. In a worst case scenario, it can be even worse, up to 6-7%, which will be contributed by a drop in exports of 10 to 15%. There will be a budget deficit of circa 35 billions, first time since 1997 actually. We have done a lot of surveys among our clients and potential clients, and can say that many companies still keep their investment plans for the next 2 years and will not leave the market so far. There will be a rethinking of supply of strategically important components, which will be forced to be produced in Russia. And I think Dr. Thomas Mundry will explain us a little bit more about the latest decrees of the government in this regard. President Putin and the government announced as well support measures for the Russian industry. And for example, the Russian automobile industry will be supported by government orders. The upcoming trends in Russia in the next 6 to 9 months will be a further increase in industry concentration, because we expect that many small and regional market players who are not financially healthy will probably leave the market. And this will result in a concentration of some large competitors, but this will also give opportunities to European companies to come to Russia and to conquer new niches actually in the market. There will be as well a shift in consumer behavior towards less expensive products, and we expect, of course, a big surge in demand for locally produced equipment, technical components, and food. Actually, for all kinds of imported goods, there will be a surge in demand for local production here in Russia. If we take a look on the map and see what kind of economic centers and where are they located in Russia, then you will see that the most of the economic centers are located in the western part, in the southwestern part, in the central part of Russia. The economy is concentrated around big cities. We have as well many industry around oil and gas in Siberia, and we have many companies which are already operating in Russia for many years and have localized their production here, like Danone, Volkswagen, Knauf, Mercedes-Benz, Claas, Schaeffler, Liebherr. All these companies are successfully doing business in Russia and have shown growth of double digits before the crisis actually. What are the investment options in Russia? If we take a look at the map again, we will see that many areas in Russia offer to your business unique opportunities and special tax regimes. You have in Russia special economic zones, more than 150 industrial parks, and Denis Zhuravsky will tell us a little bit more about that. You have many techno parks with advanced production facilities, and for example, contract manufacturing facilities are also presented in Russia. Private industrial clusters are here, which are a combination of several production facilities. You have many other types of areas like business incubators, nanotechnological centers, engineering centers, etc. There are really many options in Russia with special tax regimes for your business. And what are the promising industries for localization? It's of course still agriculture and nutrition, because there was an import ban of groceries from the United States and US. And if you localize your production here in Russia, you will get access to the Russian market and Russian supply chains. The IT sector is still a promising industry. You will find cheap and high qualified staff in Russia, which is competitive with European people. The pharmaceutical industry and medical technology industry was as well affected by a restricted access for foreign producers. That means that you should localize your production in order to sell in Russia. The machine engineering was also affected by restricted access. There was as well an import substitution plan for construction materials and the automobile industry, and all this mechanical and machinery industries are affected by the import substitution plans. And if you localize your production, you will be able to participate in public tenders, for example. And now I give the floor to my colleague, Dr. Thomas Mundry.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anton Perlin, for the first part of the presentation on the economic background. I want to tell you something about the new legal framework, and I would be glad to have the next slide. So there are certain, what I want to say at the beginning. At the beginning, of course, most important for Russia is that you must have a product and you must have clients, customers who are buying your products. All what I'm telling you now is the legal framework, and that I would say is somehow differentiated between certain restrictions of Russia, where Russia tries to restrict imports to Russia to establish its own manufacturing industry, and some I would say benefits which the government is granting. And this is some framework which, of course, always plays a role with regard to your investment, but mostly it plays a role when you intend to supply to the Russian government, to the Russian state, and to Russian state companies. All what I'm talking about now does not have an influence on, I would say, private business, on business to current private companies. Therefore, this framework is important. It's important to know, but you always must know that this is only one part of the whole history and one part which is important for your business. There are some laws having influence or influencing current investments, and these are the following. This is, on the one hand, the import substitution policy, which was enacted by Russia when the sanctions were introduced. On the other hand, Russia has reacted by trying to establish its own manufacturing industry. This reaction is understandable. It's a good reaction. What is not always good is how it is put into action. The second thing are the Russian counter-sanctions on agriculture and food products. That means that Russia denies imports regarding agriculture and food products from the EU and from the US. This means that other states are coming in, like, for example, regarding food products, Switzerland, which plays a great role. And this also gives you chances, yeah, because when you're not able to import agriculture products, you may consider establishing your plant in Russia, yeah, to produce Russian-made products. Localization requirements, that's in principle the same story. There are certain requirements which Russia has established for localization, and localization means a product is considered to be produced in Russia in order to have benefits when it's coming to sales to the Russian government or to Russian state companies. And the fourth important aspect, the fourth important governmental aspect, is the further establishment and the further integration of the Eurasian Economic Union. Could I please have the next slide? The latest amendments are introduced by two governmental decrees, which came into force at the beginning of May of this year. So they are very, very new. And these are bans on certain foreign goods which are used for government procurements. And these governments say that certain goods may not be supplied to the central and local government if they are coming from abroad. Always accepted goods from the Eurasian Economic Union. These goods are always accepted. That means, on the other hand, if you are investing in the Eurasian Economic Union, you may supply these goods if they are produced in this territory. The first list includes 125 goods. There are furnitures, transport vehicles, machines and equipment, instruments, paper and carton, footwear and clothes, and so on. Can I please have the next slide? The second decree is also of 30th of April and came into force at the beginning of May. In principle, the same restriction, and this list includes 174 positions, including chemicals, dressings, pumps, construction materials, also furniture, musical instruments, plays, toys, sports facilities, and other goods. And again, these goods are banned if they are imported from other countries than the Eurasian Union, and if they are imported for state and government procurement. On the other hand, if you are a company which produces these goods, you should consider to manufacture them in Russia or in the Eurasian Economic Union in order to produce local products which may be sold to the relevant government institutions. Can I please have the next slide? Russia also knows, in general, a number of benefits for international investors, of which you already may have heard. There are certain tax reductions, reductions on income tax, property tax, transport tax, profit tax. There are special regimes in the industrial parks and special economic zones, as Dennis Zhuravsky will explain you in more detail. There are subsidies for purchase of equipment by SMEs, whereby SMEs, that's important to know, are only businesses which are registered in Russia as SMEs, but the registration procedure can be passed without bigger problems. There are subsidies for development of utilities, infrastructure facilities, development of industries, which are defined as prioritized industries for the economy of individual regions. And again, we are coming to special economic zones, facilitation of import of goods and products to Russia. There are certain means to get lower finance rates. They are granted by the Ministry of Industry and Trade, the Industrial Development Fund, and the Cooperation of Development in different regions. And of course, what you often have heard of, the so-called SPIC 1 and SPIC 2 special investment contracts and regional investment contracts, which may provide for such benefits. I would be grateful for the next slide. Requirements to made in Russia, as I already mentioned, this is subject of the localization policy of Russia. That means Russia wants to make sure that the government buys only local manufactured goods in certain areas. And if you want to supply to the government and your product falls into these areas of industry, then you must make sure that your product is qualified as having been made in Russia. The criteria may be defined in a special investment contract if you have entered into it, and otherwise they are defined by decree number 719 of 2015. And if they are not mentioned there, then in a rather old CIS agreement of 2009. Can I please have the next slide? SPIC 1 and SPIC 2. I have not much time. Just to mention, SPIC 1 is from very many businesses not achievable because it requires a minimum investment of 750 million rubles. This minimum investment is not normal provided in SPIC 2. Therefore, SPIC 2 seems to be easier achievable, but on the other hand, the subject of the investment project must be development or implementation of a technology which is included in the so-called Register of Modern Technologies, which is approved by the government of the Russian Federation. And this register is not yet set up. And therefore, it's currently difficult to enter into a SPIC 2.1, but it's not the only thing that's missing. There are some further legal acts missing which enact the relevant legislation. Therefore, at the current stage, SPIC 2.1, 2.0 is something for the future. That's, I think, what I want to say to SPIC 1 and SPIC 2. That's most important. You get this presentation also after our seminar. So if you want to look through it, you will have the chance to do it. Can I please have the next slide? Yeah, SPICs are something which is has been entered many times by foreign investors. The first SPICs were signed by Daimler, Class, for example. The most recent SPICs were signed by Group Peugeot Citroën regarding investment in Kaluga, Ford Solis in Ulyanovsk, Toyota in St. Petersburg, and there are some projects in the pharma industry, Generium Next, and Activni component in Vladimir and St. Petersburg. So that means SPIC is something which is not just a wish. SPIC is something which can be achieved if you meet the requirements. And of course, you have to have discussions with the relevant governmental authorities. We have done this a number of times for a number of clients. And it's in principle not a bad tool. It's of course a bit overregulated as most relevant legislation in this area. But nevertheless, it is something you should think of. Could I please have the next slide? Yeah, challenge and opportunity. That's what I can say. Yeah, you have a number of restrictions regarding made in Russia, regarding localization. You have a new bans on products, but this opens chances. Yeah, if you are a company which is able to produce a banned product in Russia, you may think of trying. And you also should have in mind that there are a number of Western producers in Russia which are lacking of certain material which they need, and they have to receive the material from Russian suppliers. They are not always satisfied with this, and if you are a company which may produce this product in Russia, you will have an excellent new customer. So there are always challenges and opportunities. We, as a company working in Russia for 15 years, I myself am 25 years in Russia, we see, of course, more the chances. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas. And now the floor is for Mr. Dirk or Frike.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. I would like to give you just a short overview on the motivation for localization in Russia. And on this slide, we have given these things which you had as an opportunity even before the crisis. This has not been changed because the access to the Euro-Asian Economic Union is a market with nearly 190 million people and a GDP of nearly $1.4 billion. For example, in comparison, the German GDP is nearly $4 billion. You have also low market entry thresholds resulting due to cheap energy, raw materials, and also labor costs. Some of them are even below the level of China. There is significant local human capital resources available, especially on the IT side, engineering and metalworking. The government has announced to invest around about $350 billion in the economy by 2024 with 13 national projects. Subsidies and tax preferences for residents in the special economic zones and industrial parks, as well as within the SPIC, as Dr. Mundry already introduced to you. What is also possible is, for example, if you are right at the beginning, just go in a staged entry to the Russian market. That means step by step with small investments, and then later on you can do it by contract manufacturing. This gives you a good opportunity to test the market and really find out about the positive sides. What I can say is also do not lose the market share because of the devaluation of the ruble, which makes your products, if you only import from Germany to Russia, for example, this can be, let's say, can be compensated by increasing a localization. And please do not forget, if you are not going ahead, you may also lose the opportunities to Asian countries as they are entering in the vacuum which you are leaving probably. Now, what are the opportunities after the crisis? Definitely the industry will be subsidized by the Russian government. And there is a new trend in switching from import to local patriots. The labor market is going to be restructured. There is an oversupply of skilled and cheap stuff available. There's a general redistribution of market shares with sizable opportunities to capture with low investment caps. Mobile energy development will get impulse. Mobile energy, especially for the accumulators for electric cars, for example. Agriculture sector, as mentioned before, is going to grow. And Russia is also forced to build up a more diversified economy, as they cannot longer rely on the raw materials like oil, gas, and iron ores, for example. They have to go into a more diversified economy. Also, by the order of the government, the industry has to increase the in-house production depth as a result of the import substitution policy. So that means the industry has to do that. And do not forget that Hermes and other European credit insurance companies are open to Russia and to other CIS countries. So this is really an advantage. Well, I would like to make a short conclusion. What was the motivation for investors? Low taxes, duty-free imports, was already mentioned. Volkswagen in Kaluga, for example. The label made in Russia is in order to compete with local producers like Klaas and Krasnodar, for example. And also it is possible to build up export capacities. For example, Klaas is exporting from Russia to Germany parts which they are producing in their factory in Krasnodar. Ford Sollers was already mentioned. Export is also from Hyundai, for example, from St. Petersburg to Egypt and Lebanon. And the Luxembourg company Astron is exporting prefabricated parts for buildings, for example, for filling mineral water from their Russian plant to Algeria. And I would like to add here also another company which is situated in Belarus. This is not Russia, of course, but as they are belonging to the Euro-Asian Economic Union, they have the same advantage. They are producing passenger cars for metro, for example, and they are exporting from Belarus within the Euro-Asian Economic Zone and from outside to Finland, for example. And also they were thinking about to export to South America. So you can see that this is really a good opportunity. Well, the conclusion and the outlook, the chosen mix of incentives and limitations will further localization, will add the further localization of production. The import substitution plans are really very ambitious. Partially, they may be precised as a state direct economy. Yes, it is, but this can be also for your advantage. And in some industries and some niches, there are really great opportunities and a lots of discussion on the legal framework, new support measures, etc. This was already mentioned by Thomas Mundry. And as a general, I can only say Russia is much better than it looks from sometimes outside. Yeah, the federal special economic zones and regional industrial parks are really attractive, and definitely they will further be developed. Many investors have, for the time being, frozen or postponed some investment plans, but how they will definitely continue to do business in Russia and will also further invest. We have not a knowledge of anyone who is already in Russia is thinking to go back. All of them are staying. And those who will start to build up manufacturing capacity during the crisis are definitely warmly welcomed by administration and will also get some good governmental support. Thank you. That was from my side, and I give back to Anton, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Dirk. So you see, dear colleagues, that it is definitely worth to invest in Russia. You will get government support on federal and regional level, and the support will be stronger after the crisis for those who come to Russia and invest here. You will find many investment and growth options for your business with low capex as a result of ruble devaluation. And Schneider Group's team is able to help you to enter the market, which will be most probably redistributed in many sectors between players with most effective and modern technologies. We can help you to identify new market niches in the Russian industry and to help to apply for Russian subsidies as well. And I would like to give the floor to Denis Zhuravsky right now.
Thank you. Thanks, Anton. Thanks, Thomas and Dirk. It was really a great presentation, and I think that the sales team of Russian Federation is becoming wider thanks to you. So can I share my screen? Let me just. So can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. So I will play an unusual role, because from first view I should also talk about advantages of investing in Russia. But I think that this topic was already partly covered by colleagues from Schneider Group and will be covered by my colleagues from Ulyanovsk and Sverdlovsk region. So in this presentation, I would try to see the business environment in Russia from the perspective of international companies. And why we are doing this? Because we realize that as the Association of Industrial Parks, because we realize that just to sell the advantages, it's not enough, and Russia is still a unique combination of tremendous opportunities, but also complexities and difficulties. And this is how international companies see the Russian business environment if they run business in our country. So from this perspective, when we work with international businesses, we are trying to realize the complexity. Russia is huge, it's obviously, and we know that there are 11 time zones in Russian Federation. The huge population, the huge territory, different regions, and there are some obvious facts. But what is behind this? Behind this, we have the most complex legislation system in the world. The Russian Federation is a federation itself, and we have 3 levels of power, and we have 3 levels of legislation. This is the reason for complexity, and that's why when you run business in the country, you need to keep in mind all this specific stuff, and that's why you need right partners in Russian Federation. And I'm happy that we have so many companies within the association who can be an appropriate partner for international businesses in terms of legal support, market analysis, I don't know, technical issues like design and construction, etc., etc. So, but the association itself will also try to be useful for companies from this perspective. And industrial parks as a community, we are not just about square meters, about gas connection and about electricity. We offer to businesses much much more. If we want to talk about opportunities, it's easier. Yes, we have one of the biggest economy. You can see these graphs on my screen about GDP, import value, etc. Ruble now is enable investors to start projects in a with very good conditions, which Anton already mentioned. It's a short-term opportunities. So, but again, we are trying to find new niches for investors, and from this perspective, this is a very good analysis on my screen. We tried to compare very specific industrial costs, which you should have if you localize production facilities in Russian Federation. You can see just part of this survey which we have, and this is a comparison of gas costs with some European countries and China. And you can see that gas connection in Russian Federation, gas consumption as well, is one of the cheapest in the world. Electricity the same. If we talk about average month wages, we can also see the trends, which after 2015, which became less than in even China and East Europe. So it was the short description of some opportunities which are also obvious, but this is a map of some obstacles and difficulties and opportunities in Russian Federation, which you can see when you enter the market, when you start investments, etc. And we realized that all facts which we already mentioned and colleagues from Schneider Group also mentioned in previous presentations are very controversial. And it's some of things like state share in the economy, which is really huge in Russian Federation, might be considered as both challenge and opportunity for investors, because on the other hand, on the one hand, the state economy, it's not so good for businesses because the government control everything, etc., etc. But on the other hand, we still have one of the biggest state purchasing system in the world, which is comparable with the US. Purchase system like state purchasing and state-owned corporations. So based on this fact, you should consider each fact which you faced with as both opportunity and challenge and risk. So, and this is an example how we are trying to present the existing situation for international companies, and we don't want just to sell opportunities, because we understand that from the moment when the company, particularly foreign company, start running business in Russian Federation, they will face with such type of difficulties which we need to manage. And the purpose of the Association of Industrial Parks as the organization, and the purpose of each member of our association is to help investor to overcome these difficulties during the way, starting from business idea and finishing with operating of production business in Russian Federation. Regarding the technical issues, we also, if company considering the manufacturing, whatever you want, contract manufacturing or your own production facilities, you can also consider our support from analysis perspective. I mean, project cost estimation, preliminary cost estimation, comparison with other macro regions in the world. And there are some very specific questions when company consider whether they want to invest in own facilities or whether they want to have a joint venture or production partner in Russian Federation. They should base this business decision on very specific figures which can be provided by experienced organizations in Russian Federation or our association. We can provide just very high level estimations for the preliminary stage, for the very beginning of the project. And if you want to go deeper, we can also find for international companies right appropriate partners who will be able to make this feasibility study based on basic cost estimations and comparison with other countries. You can see some general figures on this slide, but obviously if a company address the interest to us or to our members, we should customize this information, and it might be different from industry to industry and from company to company, depends on the size of the project, amount of investments, and the terms, timelines, etc. So, but in general, the situation is very complex and you need such type of information. And I should say that industrial parks, which you can, the development of industrial parks you can see on this slide, are not just provider of facilities. Most of our members are a real business partner who can support the international businesses, starting from business evaluation and business and market research in Russian Federation, and help with finding appropriate partner in each region, and then help provide with all necessary facilities. But it's not only facilities, you should keep it in mind. That was the reason why industrial parks are developing last years. You can see the growth of the number of industrial parks, which is, this growth is much faster than the growth of economy in Russian Federation. Now we have already 269 industrial parks. This is the figures based on our research of the whole 2019. Within these 269 parks, we have already 179 operating parks, and extra to this 90 developing parks, which are under construction now. So you can also see the growth of investment within the industrial parks. And this research is very fresh. We have it done just in this month, and the whole research will be published in the end of May on our website and will be distributed within our partners. You can also address us the request, and we can share with you the whole research. We also have updated the investments within industrial parks, and you can see on this slide the how investment divided between countries. I mean, from which country we have most investments, and Russia is still #1. But what is surprisingly for me and really good sign for participants of this seminar, Germany is still #1 within other countries. We still have most investments within industrial parks from Germany. Then we have US and Japan, and then after this, all the rest countries. The list of regions most attractive for investors, I think, is not also big surprise for you, very predictable. You can see on the right part of the slide, and we also have description for different industries, sectors, which are investments divided between. So again, the whole research will be published very soon, till the end of the month, on our website. And I would say, like, kind of conclusion. So again, the association is we are willing to support international companies to run business in Russian federations, not only from the perspective of investing in construction. We can support with different perspective, and our members are also will demonstrate the same approach. We have about 150 members from 48 regions of Russian Federation. Many of them are connected to this seminar, and we will have an opportunity to get their comments. After my presentation, we will have 2 examples of such type of approach. This is a development corporation of Ulyanovsk region, which is Povolzhia. And then we will have a special economical zone, Titanovaya Dolina, which is in Sverdlovsk region. They are a good example of working with international companies. So please feel free to address questions to them or to myself. After all presentations, we will have time for the discussion. And also, I would propose to my colleagues from other regions to take an opportunity during the discussion just to give your comments and contribute the discussion. So thanks a lot. My presentation is over, and the follow goes to the next speaker, who is, I think, Titanovaya Dolina.
Okay. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I would like to greet all the guests and express my gratitude to the Association of Industrial Parks for organizing the event and the opportunity to speak. My name is Konstantin Tyukin. I am a head of Mechanical Engineering Department of Special Economic Zone Titanium Valley, and I am responsible for attracting investors. I would like to speak about current situation in our region in the days of pandemic coronavirus and potential of Sverdlovsk region, and about our investment project, Special Economic Zone, Titanium Valley. Just a few words about the current situation in Sverdlovsk region. Currently, the situation in our region is stable now. Explosive growth of infection is not observed. The regional government takes all measures to prevent the spread of viral infection. Today, a self-isolation regime is still in effect. Our basic industries did not stop working. Enterprises transferred part of their employees to their home office, and those who were unable to have to live were provided with conditions for safe work. The government is counting with support measures that have been developed to minimize the effect of the spread of virus of economic to the region. A priority action plan was approved to support small and medium-sized enterprises at risk due to the threat of spread of this infection. So we expect that in the nearest future, all the business environment will return to normal work. Now I would like to say a few words about Sverdlovsk region. Our region located in the border of two parts of the world, in Europe, in Asia. It's the central of macro region Ural. The main transport arteries of Russia pass through the Sverdlovsk region. Therefore, logistics is well developed here. Today, our region takes third place in freight turnover among Russian regions. A special pride of Sverdlovsk region is a well-developed industry. The concentration of industrial enterprises is 4 times higher than the average of in other Russian regions. The fact is that until the 19th, Sverdlovsk region was a closed region. Over the past 20 years, it became a modern international center for business communications. There are 27 representative offices of foreign countries and more than 400 representative offices for foreign companies. The region maintains trade relations with 140 partner countries, and the total trade turnover exceeds 2 billion annual. Metallurgy and engineering complexes have a dominant position in the structure of industrial complex of Sverdlovsk region. I would like to say that 25% of world production of titanium is concentrated in our region. So here is the world leader in the production of titanium alloys, VSMPO Avisma Corporation. Also, there are such major companies as Ural Mining and Metallurgical Company, Pipe Metallurgical Company, Russian Copper Company, Sinara Group, and so on. The average level of import of engineering production in the region reached 80%. Sverdlovsk region gives a good opportunity for import innovative, knowledge-intensive industries, and we are ready to offer favorable conditions for business. For this purpose, in 2010, Special Economic Zone Titanium Valley of industrial production type was created. Titanium Valley is a large-scale state project aimed at developing the Sverdlovsk region by attracting foreign investments in high-tech sectors of economy. Следующий, пожалуйста. Priority sectors of industry are aircraft industry, machine tool construction, production of titanium products, equipment and components for mechanical engineering, electrical equipment, metallurgy metallurgy, woodworking, medicine industry, production of building materials. Следующий слайд, пожалуйста. We provide a particularly preferential business regime and wide range of government support measures. Следующий. In Titanium Valley, taxes and custom preference for residents are guaranteed by law of Russian Federation. So as you can see here, income tax rate was reduced from 20 to 2%, zero rate to land tax, transport tax, and property, including a zero rate on customs VAT and on import of foreign equipment and raw materials. Nowadays, for foreign investors today, we can offer anti-crisis conditions to purchase a land for industrial development. So today, the purchase price of 1 hectare of land fully provided with engineering infrastructure, its electricity, gas, water, and so on, is just 1,800 euros per 1 hectare. And land rent a little more than 20 euros per 1 hectare of land per year. In addition, we can offer the best tariffs in the country for energy resources such as gas and electricity. Our investors can save about 30% while opening their production in special economic zone compared with the standard territory of the Russian Federation. Management company of Titanium Valley can assist our residents to localize their production and to get the status made in Russia. This status gives an opportunity to supply production to different branches of industry, such as defense enterprises. Titanium Valley Management Company guaranteed to our investors to provide support to our company in solving administrative, legal, and organization issues. Today, there are large government support measures for foreign investments from Ministry of Industry and Trade of Russian Federation and Russian Direct Invest Fund. So foreign investors are welcome and supported now in Russia. We have signed an agreement with the Academy of Experts of the state of Baden-Württemberg on mutual cooperation. Our competence center has been created on the basis of Titanium Valley, which helped to business of Russian and German companies to interact in different areas, such as marketing, benchmarking, and so on. Despite the fact that the self-isolation and remote work mode has been introduced, thanks to professional work for our team, management company Titanium Valley, on April, for the first time in the history of our company and in region also, the expert council held a meeting in the form of absentee ballots. The council approved for implementation a project for the production of components for metallurgical industry. The volume of investments in the industrial production of the investor of Titanium Valley is estimated 6 billion rubles. So we invite you and your company to become a resident of Special Economic Zone Titanium Valley. We invite you for a long-term cooperation. This crisis can be a growth point, and our company helps to achieve all the intended results. All necessary information you can find in our presentation, and I can send it to you. Okay, thank you for your attention. I finished.
Thanks a lot.
Do we have the next speaker now from Ulyanovsk?
Yes, dear colleagues, hello. Let me just show you the screen. Just a second. Like this. Can't be seen, right? Just a second. Okay, yes. So, dear colleagues, let me greet you again. Thank you very much for this opportunity today to meet you all online and outline just key options that are offered for investors in Ulyanovsk region and our industrial parks in the current circumstances. So nowadays we are also, as my colleagues mentioned, working quite actively, despite the fact that everybody is online. But still, the work goes in the same mode, and hopefully, in the nearest time, we'll all get back to our previous regime, so to say. So, just a few words about Ulyanovsk region, just a sentence. Our policy on development of investment climate in Ulyanovsk have led us to the current situation where for the past 14 years we've managed to attract more than 900 billion rubles of private investment, create more than 60,000 new jobs, of course together with our partners, and 711% of investment growth is the percent of dynamics in this regard for the last 14 years. This can be confirmed by several foreign national ratings, but the results of our work are best reflected, of course, by large number of our partners all over the world that have implemented their ambitious investment projects in the Ulyanovsk region. And here, of course, Europe and especially Germany is our top partner in terms of trade and industrial cooperation. Let me just name some of the companies that are now successfully operating their factory in Ulyanovsk region. For example, Japanese concern machine producer DMG Morisaki, with their headquarters in Germany in northern Rhine-Westphalia. They are our resident since 2012, and they have signed the special investment contract that was mentioned today by the colleagues of Schneider Group, and that was actually the first in Russia special investment contract to be signed with a foreign company. Now, while they are fulfilling their obligations under this contract, they are actively attracting suppliers and partners to localize production so that together we can form a whole machine building cluster. And it is actually also the first factory in Ulyanovsk that started to use renewable energy, placing on its territory solar panels and a few wind generators. So yeah. Then I should probably mention Schaeffler, a German producer of automotive components from Bayern. They have been operating a factory in Ulyanovsk since 2014. They produce bearings, elements of clutch for automobile industry. Then Hamle, machine producer from Germany as well, development and technological center is now operating in our special economic zone. And plastic package production of jockey plastic, mining and processing plant of Quarzwerke, production of construction materials by Henkel, many other projects. So getting back to my topic that I wanted to talk about, what does a company need nowadays to establish a secure and stable business in Russia. So I'd like to outline the main criteria for quick and successful implementation of investment projects, which will be access to markets, ready infrastructure, and human resources. And I will try to use particular examples of particular spheres and companies here. So for the market access, first here I mean just physically, logistic position in which you can deliver goods, raw materials through air. For example, in the Ulyanovsk region, there are 2 international airports on the basis of one of which were a special economic zone. Then railway, of course, automobile roads, and river ports. If we talk about market, I would also like to mention that they are already formed industrial clusters with major players, a system of suppliers as well that enables new companies to see the demand and quickly get into this suppliers chain. For example, if we take automotive cluster of Ulyanovsk region, which is part of the major Volga cluster, right? It's represented by our historically famous factories, such as Ulyanovsk automobile factory. They are now actively working. 3 years ago, they released a new model, was Profi, and now they are planning to restart was Patriot with a new frame, new diesel modification from Ford Transit turbo motor, something like this. And of course, other producers of cars, trucks, automotive components, mostly newcomers. And of course, newcomers like Bridgestone, a world famous tire producer. They have already invested more than 13 billion rubles in their factory in Ulyanovsk region. They are now actively working on creation of a big logistic terminal in the territory of our industrial park. Then car seats manufacturer Mundry, they at the end of last year, they got nominated as a supplier for the Renault concern and for the new models of Renault, and they will be producing car seats for them. They're extending the existing production in Ulyanovsk. Another company, apart from DMG, that signed a special investment contract is Isuzu. Since 2016, they have doubled their production in Ulyanovsk region, and since 2018, they work together with our company CMAS and produce city buses. Well, if we talk about something new, let me tell you about the industry and the market that was created a few years ago, just nearly from scratch, starting from wind measurements and search for partners and experts. In a few years, we managed to create a whole industry of alternative energy in Russia. From working out the regulations and support measures on federal level for projects renewable energy to creation of the first industrial wind park in Ulyanovsk region and localization of production of components for renewable energy. So we are now the basic territory for development of wind energy in Russia, and together with a company from Finland, with Fortum, we now have 2 wind farms with the total capacity of 85 megawatts, and further plans to create new wind farms so that we reach hopefully 1 gigawatt in total. And by 2030, we have an ambitious aim to get 30% of the energy consumed generated from renewable resources. Of course, this is only possible with our partners, among which I need to mention Vestas. It's a world-known company from Denmark that has created production of blades in Ulyanovsk region, plates for wind generators. This is a unique project, first in Russia localized production of components for wind energy, first special investment contract signed in the sphere of alternative energy. So we know already, right, from our colleagues that this contract enables a company to get a status of Russian producer, as well as a wide range of tax incentives and measures of support. This factory produces 4,100 blades per year, and they are using unique technology of vacuum infusion for production of really huge blades, 16 meters long, and they weigh more than 12 tons. With regard to this, to alternative energy, I'd like to mention here another very important thing for our investors, and a question that we're constantly working on: availability of human resources for any new enterprise. And here, as an example, we have opened the wind power engineering department in our Ulyanovsk State Technical University. They have educational programs implemented in partnership with leading Russian universities like the High School of Economics, the Moscow State Technical University, and we're also in partnership with the Danish Technological University as well. So Vestas, together with Rosnano, have a training center in our Center for Nanotechnology. So we are nowadays creating a whole center of competences in the sphere of renewable energy in Ulyanovsk region. We want to cover all directions of development of this sphere and welcome new partners from all over the world to join it, of course. Another important point in the quick start of the project is for sure availability of investment infrastructure. And here, I mean, of course, different investment sites, ready land plots with infrastructure, industrial buildings available for rent, for purchase, build-to-suit options as well. So the last few years showed us that more and more companies tend to choose ready buildings rather than building by themselves on land plots, at least for a start. This is why we react to this very actively. So nowadays in the Ulyanovsk region, you can find any zone or any tax regime that can be found in Russia that has already been spoken about today, starting from regional industrial parks. For example, here you can see our industrial zone Zavolzhye, where most of our investors that I mentioned today are now localized, so 27 residents so far. Then, of course, special economic zone, which is actually special economic zone Ulyanovsk, the only one in Russia based on the territory of international airport, having access to port, offering to both have production and storage of goods as well. Then territory of advanced social economic development, relatively new instrument with widened systems of tax incentives. Here we have actually a very interesting project if we talk about brownfield sites. So together with KAMAZ, we have created an industrial park here with 150,000 square meters of ready industrial premises. It's now very actively being filled in by different companies. We're already thinking of extending it. So just maybe to sum up, right, our work, I believe, and we all, the team believes that nowadays we need to be in constant live dialogue with the business, see and react to its needs, and following this path together, we can all create new interesting projects and maybe new interesting industries as well. So thank you very much for this opportunity today to have this discussion. And yeah, I'm always available for the questions. Here you can see some of my contacts. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Vera. Anton, as I already mentioned in the very beginning, our members can provide much more than just production facilities or square meters in industrial parks. They are really becoming important partners for international companies, and we have seen just a couple of very good examples of this. I'm convinced that there are other colleagues from different regions of Russian Federation who also can share their attitude. I think we can give these opportunities to other participants to share their comments on this. But the message to international businesses is not to consider industrial parks and regional development corporations just at the locations for or facilities. It's really a very important regional partner for your businesses. Anton.
Yes, thank you, Denis. I think you are completely right. We have, with your team and with your members of the association, we have strategic partners for every kind of business who is coming to Russia. We have here many possibilities, and not really land plots and subsidies, but as well you can find here technologies, suppliers, and many other important services you will not find probably in Asia, for example. And now I would like to make a smooth introduction to the Q&A session. And I would like to ask Mr. Dirk Frike to answer the question which we have received yesterday via email, and then we can go to questions from the chat.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. We have received yesterday one question from Thomas Dalla Vecchia from Switzerland, and I will just read the first question. For me is more to get an overall view about opportunities, as well as we are on a possible project for production machine. What are the specific advantages in relation of manufacturing experience in which area proposed / cost level? Okay, my answer will be that first of all, Russia is really good in doing metalworking. And that means including, for example, cast iron parts for bodies of machines, for producing apparatus and vessels for the chemical industry, and all these things. So this can be done really with a great expertise in Russia, and there are a lot of companies which are able to do so. It's becoming a little bit more difficult if you are having, let's say, a very high precision for the surface finishing. Then you have to be a little bit more precise what you really need to do. But also there are companies available which can even work under high precision for surface finishing, for example. If we know a little bit more in detail what you are really requesting, we can help you in finding these areas and finding those companies also here in the industrial zones, for example. But we do need some more details on that. Your second question was, what is the advantage between importing finished parts / complete machine and local finishing for production machines in general, for customs, for tax, and other benefits? This is a question which is probably not so easy to be answered with one sentence, because first you have to think about which parts you really would like to manufacture or to fit together in Russia, because this is probably know-how related. and you may probably not be in a position to do 100% shift of the production from your country to Russia. So this is the first question which you have to answer yourself. The second is that you have to ask yourself if you have all the possibilities, or let's say all the drawings, for example, the workshop drawings, the sketches for that, and if this is available in Russia or only in German or English, then it is very important that you give us the customs tariff numbers, because only if we know the custom tariff numbers, we can exactly provide and check which advantage or disadvantage you may have on producing in Russia. So this is really very, very important. Other benefits, okay, other benefits, this could be really the manufacturing or the erection of components in the industrial zones, for example. You may also make use of local products like metal sheets, for example. They are probably from Russian production. They are probably cheaper if you get it from Switzerland or somewhere else. But also, again, this is only a general answer to that, and we do need some more details in order to give you a precise answer. With regard to the custom tariffs, for example, in the automotive industry, we know that if you are delivering single parts, this is tax-wise more economical than to deliver the finished or the final parts. Your third question was, are there any advantages if exporting from a local site to Euro-Asian Economic Union than an export from Germany or German-produced product? Which details have to be respected? What is the difference if from Switzerland for a Swiss-made product, for example? Yeah, here I can also only answer in some general words that if you are producing in the Euro-Asian Economic Zone, you are already inside that region. That means if you are producing in Russia, for example, you can deliver to Kazakhstan, you can deliver to Kyrgyzstan, you can deliver to Armenia or Belarus, because they are a member of this zone. You do not have to be afraid of some more customs in this zone. If you are going to deliver it from Germany or from Switzerland, for example, then you have, by entering this zone, you have to pay taxes. And again, here we need the tariff numbers. You also have to check by yourself if there are some export restrictions, probably from Switzerland or from Germany. And of course, you have to look to the sanctions in general. If you are allowed to do so, please also pay attention that some parts are restricted due to the so-called dual use conditions, but this has to be checked with your local authority. In Germany, it is the so-called BAFA, Bundesausfuhramt. In Switzerland, I think you have the same. If all these things are known, then we can also go into more details and can answer your question precisely. So for the time being, I can only give you this as an example. Thank you.
Thank you, Dirk. And there was another interesting question about the protection of intellectual property. Maybe Thomas can answer this question from the legal perspective.
Yeah, in general, most issues we have with regarding to the registration of IP rights itself, because we often have situations that certain persons have already registered trademarks or patents, and then asking for a license fee. Therefore, it is important to quickly register IP rights when a company intends to invest in Russia. The registration of IP rights itself is not an issue. That's easily done. There is a very good legal framework. Also, licensing of IP rights is not really an issue. And after having registered IP rights, it is also usually possible to enforce the registered IP rights. It is difficult, of course, to register any rights on know-how. If something is not registered, that is rather difficult to enforce. But if there is a registered IP right, then it is usually possible to raise claims against a violator of these rights. So I can somehow agree it is still difficult, but I think the main difficulties are at the beginning when it comes to registration, if these IP rights are already by some other person registered. When it is registered, I would say the legal situation in Russia is not bad.
Thank you, Thomas. And there was another question about sanctions, if they are limiting banking or financial support for foreign investors.
No, in principle not, because a subject of the finance sanctions is the financing of Russian banks and Russian financial institutions with long-term loans. And it does not directly concern credits granted by an investor to its subsidiary or granted to a Russian subsidiary of a Western business. Therefore, they are not directly hindering investments. But what, of course, the broader effect of the sanctions is that they hinder, of course, the development of the Russian economy, because very many Russian banks need debt financing from Western banks in order to be able themselves to grant financing to investors. But in general, if it comes to a particular investment, these sanctions usually are not playing a big role. But what, of course, you always have to check is whether your investment is in compliance with EU and US sanctions. And this can become an issue, in particular if you wish to invest in areas which are somehow linked to the military industry and to the oil and gas industry.
Thank you, Thomas. Maybe we will have more questions to the regions and to other speakers, to Denis Zhuravsky. So please feel free to ask any of your questions right now.
Anton, may I just answer one question which we received shortly before the start of our webinar? Is that
yes,
okay?
Yes, of course. Mm-hmm.
Because there was a question which we received from Mr. Oliver Pillard, and he asked what guarantees to get paid for a French provider selling products and services in Russia. And this is also a little bit in conjunction to what Dr. Mundry just said. I will answer it only from the sales point of view. Russia in general has a good reputation in paying their financial obligations. Political risks can be insured by French export credit insurance, COFAS, for example, or in Germany it is Hermes. And like every other export business, you have to ensure payment, for example, by letter of credit, advance payments, etc. If your payments are including milestones, you should try to negotiate always a positive cash flow. But in general, I do not see any problems with payments from Russia. Maybe Dr. Mundry can add something to that or agree.
No, I agree to Mr. Frike, and indeed, important tools for securing credits are letters of credit, in particular for financing payments in sale and purchase agreements. That's often used and that's working. Russian banks are working excellent. So very often credits are secured by bank guarantees. When it comes to sale and purchase agreements, you may agree on a pledge of the sold goods, yeah, and this pledge remains in force until the whole purchase price is paid. Although I also have to say that enforcement of a pledge under Russian law is not really something easy. Yeah, but what is also important to know, yeah, of course, enforcement is an issue, but a Russian customer having a pledged good is very much interested in getting rid of the pledge, yeah, because the Russian customer, of course, also understands, yeah, if he's not paying and he has a pledged good, he's violating the law, and therefore it's, I would say, it's a good thing to do, and you always should consider in sale and purchase agreement creating a pledge, which can then be rather easily by agreeing on the pledge in one clause of the sale and purchase agreement. Yeah, and if it comes to bigger investments, you always should consider creating a mortgage with regard to land or buildings. This is also something which is very very well working under Russian law. It's not only the creation of the mortgage, but also the enforcement. These are tools which are working under Russian law and which should always be considered.
Thank you, Thomas. Yes, we would like to collect more questions, so please feel free to ask any of the speakers or regions. We are all here to discuss the current situation.
May I step in a second regarding to the coverage of Russian risk?
Please.
My name is Freddy Spadaro. We are collaborating with a large Russian bank, well, the largest Russian bank. We are setting up at the moment a program that will allow European companies, including the Swiss ones, so the ones that are under the control and under the managing of FINMA, but in general, the entire European panel of potential exporters, structures that will allow to have a very large coverage of risk on any kind of size of Russian companies. So this will allow exporters to set up credit protection on local Russian risk. And this can be done with a collaboration with Russian counterparts. So this is something that we are actively working on it in order to allow export to run.
And what is the question?
The question basically located again back to the sanctions, and maybe Thomas may answer it because he mentioned it in between of the words. It is correct that the sanctions are in reality not touching the export, because the sanctions are indicating the limitations of Russian entities or Russian banks to get financed. But as a matter of fact, many companies are frozen or are restricting the activity in Russia because they are in some way fearing to get under pressure just alone for the fact to be operational in Russia. So what could be really done, and I'm asking if there are tools or if there is more extensive information available, is really to explain to the public and to the companies that sanctions shouldn't be a legal limit because they are not restricting in reality the work of companies. They are restricting the way of financing of Russian banks. There is little information, very little people are going to read into the FATCA policy, into the FATCA announcements, what the limitations are. But there could be a lot of work be done to clarify to people. And I'm just asking if this wouldn't be eventually something that you may be supportive in telling to people what the limitation really is. Because many people just think that Russia is impossible to work with, and this is plainly not true.
No, that's indeed, Mr. Spadaro. Thank you very much for your comment. That's indeed true. Sanctions does not mean that nothing is possible in Russia. And in particular, the finance sanctions are something which is limited to Russian banks and Russian financial organizations. The direct investments in Russia and also export business can be harmed because subject of the sanctions are also lists of Russian persons with whom no business may be made. And therefore, every activity with regard to Russia must be checked against US and EU sanctions. And it can be in general said that most of the areas are concerned which are connected to the military industry and the oil and gas industry. But nevertheless, there always should be, prior to any investment, there should be the EU and US sanctions check. And the sanctions are, on the one hand, clear regarding that what is intended to prohibit. That's on the one hand clear. Yeah, but when you are looking closer into the sanctions, you also will notice that the sanctions are not very good, not very well worded, and this unclearness of the sanctions is usually for the disadvantage of the investor, because the relevant authorities in the US and the EU can always argue that a certain action, a certain investment, falls into the framework of the sanctions. That is, I think, a general comment. I do not want to do this comment because I'm a person living and working in Russia for many years, and I'm glad to live here, and I know that very many investments are successful. But in any event, sanctions should be reviewed, and they are limited. And if you are in a business area which is not concerned by the limited sanctions, then at the current stage you can be rather sure that Europe will not be affected by EU or US sanctions.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There is another question from Ivao Ohasi. Maybe Denis can ask the question, can answer the question.
Yeah, I was thinking about who is the right person to to ask this question, because we have just discussed with our team in the association last night the issue that in comparison with 2017 or 2018, unfortunately, we can see decrease of investments into manufacturing. So, and what are the reasons behind this? Is a really very, very complicated question. I think that we have different views on this. My view is that it's difficult to divide all investments between each year. It's not always reflects the real situation, because investments are very long-term projects, and when we have formal statistic for 2019, it means that there are results of business decisions made in 2015 or 16. This is a specific of direct investments, particularly in manufacturing area. It doesn't work like, okay, the situation is becoming better. Let me just invest $100 million, and build a manufacturing location in Russia. So this is a result of the reflection of the situation which we had 3-4 years ago. And that's the first point which I have. We don't if we talk about current crisis because of coronavirus, we will see the reflection on the investments in 2022, 2023. That's my point. I think that such investors who are under construction now, they have made their decisions in the past. But still, we need to answer the question, what was the reason? I think that this it's becoming not so important now, because again, what we will how we will manage this information. I think that obviously this is a result of economical situation in the world and in Russia. So that's my point. My view is let's not consider this investment decree as a short-term process. But if maybe some other participants of the discussion have their view, and please feel free to share your ideas. But I would also ask Mr. Ohasi, I think when Mr. Ohasi-san raised this topic, maybe he had something in his mind, what is the real reason? And Ohasi-san, please, could you share your personal view on this?
Denise, may I add something to your comments from let's say from a person who was working with Russia for the last round about 15 years, but not working in Russia, but working in Germany, but for the Russian economy and for the Russian market. From my point of view, one of the main reasons why there was not very much investments in the manufacturing sector was that it was not really, let's say, supported by the Russian government, because the Russian government made this money with export of oil and gas and iron ores and so on. Special on the metalworking, Russia is very good, and so there was not really the, let's say, the pressure behind to really modernize the manufacturing industry. Another reason is because Russia itself is a big market, and so the market was absorbing a lot of products which are probably not competitive on the international market, but they were competitive still on the Russian market. So at the end of the day, it was not really attractive to invest into the local manufacturing industry. From my point of view, this is now absolutely changing, because first of all, there are some let's say, restrictions from the government. We talked about that earlier this day. And if you are also looking, for example, to the automotive industry, the automotive industry was also a little bit forced to invest in Russia. And at the end of the day, they were happy to do so, because they are really selling a lot of products on the local market, like Volkswagen in Kaluga, for example. And if you are looking to Kaluga, I've been there in December last year. This is a great area to see how the investment of Volkswagen was working like a nucleus, and how many other companies are now surrounding this area and supporting this localization. And under the present, let's say, also political circumstances, I personally I expect that this will be a boost for the localization. Otherwise, the companies will lose their market share.
Mm. But still, Mr. Frike, did you compare the level of investments or activity of investors in Russia and worldwide? Because we all know that there is a degree of investments all over the world, and it's not only Russia which has less investments than it was expected last couple of years.
Yes, of course. I mean, this is not so easy to answer that question, but of course, when you are going to enter a market in general, you first of all you have to make let's say an investigation or a market study, how many products you can sell on the market, and you have to make a commercial evaluation, what you can, how many products you can sell, and if it is economicable, feasible to produce them in this market or just to export it from the home country to this market. And so also with the, let's say, the raising living standards in Russia, things like, for example, cars became more and more attractive to be produced in Russia, because there is a raising market also. So from that point of view, I think it is really understandable that this is going step by step, and it is not probably a big gang.
I would also like to make some comments. I agree with Mr. Zhuravsky and Mr. Frike, to which what they said. I think one important aspect at the current times is, of course, the political climate. Because when you're opening as a German entrepreneur or an international entrepreneur, you're opening the newspapers, US newspapers, European newspapers, you find everything bad in Russia. And you say, well, you must be mad if you're investing in that country. So I think that's one not unimportant point. If you just keep the newspapers away, if you don't look into the internet, if you just have a look at what happens, if you are present in Russia for a couple of months or years and are in discussions, you will see it's not so bad in Russia as it looks like from the mass media. That's one. Another point which I've seen, of course, is that I cannot say that Russia is a nice host to investors. I see that Russia needs investment. I see that there are very many efforts of the government, very many efforts of companies to attract investments. But that is something which is not everywhere and always the case. Look at the localization rules. This is a nightmare, to be honest. Yeah, to go through all these rules here and there to understand it. It's not something where you have the feeling, yes, this is something which I must do. Yeah, this is something you have to convince an investor, yes, deal with this, and you will see you get benefits. But on the first one, you say, oh, gosh, do I really need this? But that's a psychological point, which you can come over if you go into that, if you look for information and if you make your research, then you will see you can cope with this. A third aspect, which does not make it easy, is that there are some markets in which you really have to crack. Yeah? Because if you have a good product, most products which you have already the equivalent in Russia. I have one example from the railway industry. There was one business which wanted to deliver a product to the Russian railway industry, an excellent product. And there is, of course, a Russian producer. And this Russian producer, of course, keeps tight to his market share. And he doesn't want to give anything away. So you don't only have to convince the client, the customer. You must also crack in either go into a joint venture with the current producer, if this is possible, and not, you have to crack into this relationship, which is not always possible because there are many links of this current producer with the industry. And this is something also which you have to consider. You have to go into that, and you have to see where the market is, and to weigh whether an investment makes sense. So these are negative aspects which I've mentioned, and which you always have to consider. On the other hand, again, we have to say there are many businesses, German businesses, international businesses, big business like Siemens, medium businesses, small businesses, which have overcome these difficulties and made successful business in Russia.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas.
Yes, and I would like to add just one comment that there is indeed a change in the government policy. I mean, if 20 years ago nobody was thinking about supporting small and medium enterprises, I think now the new government understands that it cannot, that the economy cannot rely anymore on big government enterprises which are not really very effective in its production, etc. And you need indeed dynamic small and medium enterprises, and we all hope that the government, and from what I have heard, the government is indeed working on new support measures for small and medium enterprises, and I think the share of SMEs will grow in the next 10 years.
Yeah, sure. May I come back to Ivo Ohasi? Ohasi-san, could you please share your attitude to the level of investments in Russia and worldwide? Because I think that if you raise this topic, you have something in mind. Please share your view on this.
Thank you very much for your question. I will make a very brief comments. First of all, I liked one phrase during this seminar. Somebody said, or somebody wrote, that for foreigners, for foreign investors, Russia looks worse than it actually is. Somebody said that nuance. I think it's one of the keywords. Russia is actually good, but it doesn't look good as it is, in fact. This is maybe one of the things. The second one, there are many Japanese companies who are afraid to come to Russia, but there are some portion of Japanese companies, approximately 200 companies in Moscow at least, and they came here with a lot of difficulties, but now they are not sorry to remain here in this market. And they say they would like to grow their business together with the growth of Russian economy, Russian market, development of Russian society. They are not interested in going back home. This is the second point. Mm-hmm. And the third point is that I recently had a discussion with one of the Russian investors who are investing in Asian countries, like in Indonesia, in Vietnam. And I told to him why it's time to invest into the Russian Far East. It will be not a lot of, but some business and investment opportunities. But he said very clearly, no, I'm not interested in investing into the Russian Far East. In Indonesia, it's much more profitable. It's much more interesting as a business, So I think we have to change some kind of, general understanding that some parts of Russia is not attractive for investment. Even Russian investors are thinking in that way. And maybe just to change this kind of attitude gradually will be very important. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Ivan-san, do you mean that we need to change attitude for real situation? Am I right that your message is that the real situation in Russia is better than it is recognizing by investors?
Well, it's already a technical question. I think perhaps there will be some potential for Russia to increase the quality of presenting themselves.
Okay. Okay.
More clever way, not in a straight way. You know, we are beautiful, we are attractive, not in that way, but more clever way. Maybe this is one point. And second one is that this is my personal conviction that Russia needs to create or needs to develop very strong message to which direction they themselves want to develop its economy, its industry. You know, it's so diversified and it's not very clear. But in Germany, in Japan, in China, the government, business, society, they have, on the basis of some consensus, they have some clear message. Like, I don't know, industry 5.0 or 4.0, I don't know. Like a new quality life in Chinese society or whatever, you know. Every stage, you know, the government, the society, the national business, they have a clear message where they want to develop, you know. From Russia, we less frequently hear that kind of message. I think that also, you know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And another brief question to Mr. Frike, or maybe to Mr. Mundry. What is you know Germany better than we are, and than we do. And can you just a brief overview? What is happening with investments in Europe, particularly in Germany? Is the activity of investors is the same as expected, decrease or increase? What is happening now?
Well, for the time being, as far as Germany is concerned, I would say that there's also for a lot of hesitations now to invest. It's here and there, there's some modernization, and for example, in the chemical industry, on the big sites of, let's say, Bayer or BASF or so on, if something is broken, they are going to replace it. But if they are really going to increase the capabilities or the production capacities, I cannot see that for the time being, because the market is more or less already covered. So there is not really a need for that. But with regard to Russia, I can only support what was mentioned here before from the speaker before. Yes, there is a big hesitation sometimes if you are coming with an idea. And that is part of my activities, for example, not only for Schneider, but also for my own activities. If I get a lot of inquiries from Russia about getting technology from Germany. And then I'm trying to go to companies or to find companies which can provide such a technology for an investment in Russia. And it is indeed very difficult to support, to convince those companies which have never done any activities with Russia before that it is worthwhile really to invest in such a country. The first answer which I normally get is, oh, Russia, sanctions. And the second is, oh, we have business in the United States. We are afraid of being blacklisted by Mr. Trump. On the other hand, if you are looking to the investments which have already been done by most of the big German companies in Russia, they are all of them. They are happy, and they are happy that they have done that before. And of course, it is indeed really, let's say, a problem of political marketing, and that is hesitation for the time being, and this has to be changed.
Yes, I would just like to add that indeed many companies who have entered the Russian market like 5 or 10 years ago have really shown double-digit growth numbers compared to their businesses in Europe, for example. Because if you have a modern and very effective technology and production processes, you can really get a high growth here in the market. It was like that before the crisis, at least.
Mm.
Cool.
Okay, I want to make 2 points. I appreciate everything what has been said. I appreciate also what is just mentioned, that indeed Russia must improve its marketing on the one hand. On the other hand, I think Russia is subject to heavy anti-marketing from the US and following the US from the EU, which is difficult to overcome. But nevertheless, marketing must be changed. I also consider the situation in Russia much better than it is said everywhere. We also have a further question now, which I would like to answer. That's a question regarding investment industry field of energy, shipbuilding, and defense. The question is how this can be secured. I would like to refer what I already mentioned. Most means of security are letters of credit, bank guarantees. In the particular area here, you also think I should consider of mortgages and pledges. But of course, taking security in Russia, as everywhere in the world, is a question of the particular situation. Yeah, what can be found there? Which assets does the customer have? What is subject of the business exactly, and on that basis, it must be reviewed which security in concrete can be taken. It should always take into consideration not only to take Russian security, but also maybe security in the West, maybe guarantees from Western banks or any assets which are located outside the Russian Federation. But again, this is something which must be considered on the basis of the particular situation.
Thank you, Thomas. And I would like to try to ask one question to our foreign investors who are still in the chat after 2 hours of discussion. Maybe you can share your views on your investment plans in Russia in the next years. Do you still have plans to invest in Russia, or are the plans on hold right now or frozen?
It's too direct question, Anton. If I were investor, I would avoid answering in such a type like, yes, we still have our plans, or no, we don't have. It's, I think.
Well, let me try to make a comment from my German point of view. Of course, for the time being, a lot of things are just simply due to the Corona crisis are, let's say, a little bit on hold, because companies are first securing their to survive and to securing their financial possibilities and so on. But this will be, from my point of view, this will be over within the next couple of months. And of course, some companies will also get bankrupt. This is for sure, but probably not due to the crisis, but due to their business model. And this is also very important to see and to review if your business model is okay in general. The fact that Russia is, let's say, putting also some pressure on importing from European countries may really force some companies to think their policy or to rethink their policy just only to deliver, because this will not be possible in the future probably, and therefore they have to do something, and if they like it or not. But if they do not want to lose this market, they have to think about really of going to Russia. And also from myself, I can only say I'm now in business for nearly 40 years, and I was working for maybe 25 or 30 years for the Middle East area, and the last 15, 20 years now to Russia or to the Eastern European countries. And I can only say it is much better than expected. And from this point of view, I can only say, yes, please do so, and go to Russia. It's definitely a good decision.
And maybe another second question, what kind of support measures are missing foreign investors in Russia right now, and what would you like to have in the next years? What kind of support you would like to have?
Hello, can everybody hear me? I would like to give maybe a short insight on that question.
Yes, please.
My name is Daniel Fuchs. I'm an Austrian entrepreneur. I'm based in Russia, in St. Petersburg. We are actually a global distribution arm of an American high-tech oil and gas company that provides latest technology for the upstream market, and actually increases oil production and reduces production costs. Principally a very attractive product for the Russian market. We want to distribute our product in Russia, but also our core focus is at the moment in the Middle East. And of course, I was thinking of giving Russia a priority in the beginning because I'm based here already for 2 years. We eventually came to the decision that we will give the Middle East a priority with our product. And the reasons are the following, as discussed before. The environment is not very inviting for foreign products, even though the Russian market would need them. It starts, as already said, with actually misinformation given on the world market about the sanctions. When you talk to Europeans or especially Americans about Russia, you just hear you can't sell anything, especially in regard to the oil industry, which is absolutely not true. So what Russia could improve here is actually this political marketing to really explain what do the sanctions really do, what do they to import, or what are the consequences of those sanctions, so which could really be placed on the Russian market. Is you have to go for a jungle of consultants, legal support, law firms in order to really find out what you can do. And that's an obstacle for many people. You have a problem also with the image, but also in practical with the juridical system in Russia. There is not much trust in it, especially when it comes to intellectual property. That was also one of my questions before, and I'm very grateful and thank you very much for answering that question. Our product actually is controlled by a cloud-based artificial intelligence software, so it's a really high-tech product, and intellectual property is a vital issue here. And many companies are afraid to come to Russia with such a product because, as we know, labor force and human resources are very good in Russia, very intelligent, very educated, and companies are afraid that this product might be copied in whatever way. And even if you find out, you might not have a real chance to fight against it because of the legal system. So on the other hand, there's also a problem with the attitude, what was a direct question before. The attitude, I think, on the Russian side is also a problem because they do not, I think Russia is, and they have all the rights to be very proud of their country, very proud of the history, very proud of the economy. But I think this proudness is also an obstacle. Because when you come and negotiate in Russia, you will find out that yields are quite expensive, quite low. The market is not as it should be compared to yields compared to the Western market. So combining all these factors, I can understand that there is many investors that stay reluctant and keep in a waiting position or even refuse to come to Russia, invest in Russia. And I think the solution can only be to first of all, ease up the regulations, to ease up the attitude, to create a more welcome attitude to investors, and also, as it was discussed before, to strengthen the small and medium-sized companies and SMEs, because these are the ones, these are the innovators of the industry. These are the innovators of economy. They bring the inventions. It's not the state-owned companies, it's not the large corporations. They are rather keeping a conservative point of view here and hindering the economy to really develop in the right direction, also in point of diversification. And seeing all that, you will easily understand why Russia's potential has not been used as it could be. Russia has an enormous potential, and this is my humble opinion, and I hope we can discuss or get any answers on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have other comments on this?
Yeah, probably I'm repeating a little bit what I said before. I can follow the points which were just raised not right now, because I was working also for the Middle East area, and indeed doing business there is probably a little bit more professional than it used to be in Russia in former times. But what we should not forget is that not only, let's say, the last 1 or 2 years, but even since 5 or 10 years or even longer, Russia is really building up an environment, especially also on the legal side, which was mentioned, which is quite comparable in a lot of things, which are quite comparable to European legal standards. Unfortunately, that is not so much known in other countries, or it is not welcomed probably. What I from myself, when I started to work with Russia, which is around about 15 years ago, I discovered really for me one big advantage, which is the, let's say, more the personal relationship. When I was working in the Middle East area, as I said, this was quite professional. There were also a lot of guys from the Netherlands, for example, working in Abu Dhabi and so on. The professionalism was not a question. But really to get into contact with the native people there, it was more or less impossible. And that is something, when I started to work with Russia, let's say the personal relationship, to build that up, first of all, is very, very important. And this is also very helpful to overcome even some problems which you may raise during your project development, during the negotiations and so on. And so from my point of view, Russia is much more close to Europe with regard to the let's say something like feelings or so on. And really, I have to say, I personally appreciate much more working in Russia than I used to do in former times in the Middle East. This is a very personal statement from me, but I wanted to make it here at this time.
Thanks. Any other comments?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Take care.